Welcome to the Cedar Creek Bible in a Year podcast. Whether you are listening on your own, with a friend, or a group of friends, we hope this podcast helps you connect with Scripture and also enriches your relationship with God. Here are your hosts, Luke Shortridge and Andy Rechtenwald.
Well, hi guys, welcome back to the podcast. This is Luke Shortridge. I'm hanging out with Andy Rechtenwald. Andy, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Luke. How are you doing?
You're still rocking that Indians hat.
That's right. I'm a faithful fan even when they suck.
Well, can you use the S word on the podcast?
You know what? The Tigers aren't doing that well either, if I do recall correctly.
We don't need to talk about the Tigers. We don't need to talk about my poor Justin Verlander getting destroyed. This is a great segue because we're both sad and somber and sober, and today we're talking about Ecclesiastes.
Perfect.
Which is one of the most depressing books of the Bible.
It's very true. It probably is the most depressing book in the Bible.
So Ecclesiastes is about the meaning of life and finding the meaning of life.
Yeah.
So I thought for today's opener, we would do something kind of fun, but kind of depressing.
Oh, good.
And that is a little bit of depressing trivia.
Wow.
So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to ask you questions that have to deal with either depression or depressing topics. And we'll see how you do. Are you ready?
Yeah, man, sure.
All right, let's fire away.
Sounds
All right.
awesome.
First question is, what is nihilism?
The nihilism is the belief that nothing matters, pretty much. Like, there's just no morals, it just nothing matters.
Survey says correct. You got the thumbs up from Eric.
Did my best.
Well done. Nihilism is from the German word nihil, and it means nothing. So it's marked by disillusionment, futility, despair, and the inevitability of death.
Yeah.
Well done. All right, you're 1 for 1.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, who was the German philosopher in the late 1800s that nihilism is often associated with? And he is quoted as saying, God is dead.
Friedrich Nietzsche.
Wow, you are 2 for 2, my friend.
I know my stuff.
You do.
Hopefully.
All right.
We'll see the next question.
Next question is, name 2 current antidepressants that are on the market. You can give us the generic name or the brand name.
Okay, Zoloft.
Yes.
Okay. And yeah. Oh, I don't want to get this wrong. Give me 2 seconds. 2, 1.
Starts with a P is the most common one.
The first thing that came to my mind was Percocet. That's a
Nope.
painkiller.
Nope.
I've had it once.
Nope.
It's pretty powerful stuff. I don't know. Dang it.
All right. Well, I can't give you credit for that one.
That's fine.
Prozac,
Prozac, Zoloft,
Paxil would have also been acceptable.
Sure.
Celexa or Lexapro.
Okay.
There's your options. All right. Name one of the 3 mood-related chemicals that can become imbalanced for people suffering with depression.
Okay. Dopamine, is that one of them?
Yes, that is correct,
good,
sir.
Good.
Well done.
Lee talks about it a
serotonin.
lot from his, he talks about it with his I'm going to say Percocet again.
Parkinson's. Oh, boy. This is going great.
Yeah.
All right. So far, so good. All right. Here's your next question. In what war has the United States lost the most amount of soldiers?
Civil War?
There it is.
Yep.
That a boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at it. More than all the other wars combined.
Yeah. Fighting against yourself.
800,000.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. All right. Who wrote the 80s classic, A Cry for Help? And just to give you a hint, he also wrote the internet favorite, Never Gonna Give You Up.
Internet favorite? Okay, wait. Rick Astley?
Yes.
Never gonna give you up. I love that song.
This podcast just got rickrolled.
Sometimes.
All right. Here's the next one. What is the average life expectancy for the average United States male?
Male. Is it?
I'm looking for an exact age.
Wow, that's tough.
It's a tough one.
Average life expectancy for a male in the United States. 68?
You are way off.
Really?
78.
Great. That's 10 years that I was off.
There you go. Bonus.
That's awesome. I'm supposed to be depressed after this? That feels good.
All right. What state has the highest rate of suicide in the U.S.?
Trying to think of
Contributing factors, high percentage of disabled adults, high smoking rate, no health insurance, and binge drinking.
binge drinking. I don't know.
This one's super tough.
Is it? I mean, I'm trying to think of a place that's pretty, really just not a city. I'm guessing One of those cowboy states, maybe.
Yeah, you're onto it.
Montana, maybe.
Close.
Wyoming.
There it is. You got it.
There we
you
go.
dog.
Look at that.
Well done.
Good for me.
All
I'm
right.
feeling good about this.
Here's your next
I'm supposed to be
depressing
depressed,
question.
but- oh, go ahead.
How many views does Miley Cyrus Wrecking Ball video have on YouTube?
That
If
it
this
is gonna-
doesn't depress you,
I don't know, 5 million.
that's your answer?
Yeah, that's my guess.
You were off by a little bit. 783 million views.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is depressing.
All right, here's
that's
your
the most depressing.
Here's your
question you
last
asked.
depressing question.
'Kay.
What's the average height of the American male?
Oh, come on. It's like 5'9", right? 5'10", something like that.
5'10".
Stupid. You know what? That's okay. Can we move on, please?
All right. So according to my count, you got 2 questions wrong, so I can't give you any points for that.
That's
You got 8 questions right, and I'm not going to give you any points for that either because this is depressing trivia, and it is meaningless and pointless,
yeah.
just like life potentially could be. All right. Good
Touche.
stuff.
Yeah.
So Ecclesiastes, the book, shows us what is meaningless in life. And Solomon talks a lot about the things that people maybe think are important or think have value.
Yeah.
But he kind of talks about them and talks about pursuing them and really comes to the conclusion that most things on this planet have little to no meaning at all, which is really depressing,
Yep.
but also is true.
I mean, yeah, sure.
I would say, his conclusion would be that a life without God and without
Yes.
eternal, if you divorce the eternal from what is earthly, what is around us, then that really leads to a depressing life.
It really
You'll
does.
come to the conclusion that nothing has meaning.
Yep, and I think that it can be very easy to read Ecclesiastes out of context, especially specific portions of it, and think that Solomon was saying literally life has no purpose. And there's even parts where he said things about God that you're like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But to get the whole scope of what he's talking about, you have to read the entire book.
Well, let's get into some of the context of the book then.
Sure.
So the purpose of the book to show the meaninglessness of life without God at the center. And I would say that he expresses this idea of what is meaningless over 20 times. I mean, it really is a little depressing when you just read it front to back.
Sure.
But he's doing it for a point, and the point is to show that you have to have God at the center of your life. If not, you are going to lead to a place of despair.
Yeah, I think that there are probably some people listening, including myself, that have been through that stage of life where you are living for what is here and you don't have an eternal perspective. And at some point, you get to that place in your life where you realize that if there's no God, this is all pointless.
Right. So the author is identified at the beginning of the book as the teacher, but there's enough clues there to tell us that it's Solomon.
Yep.
He's writing it. We've talked about Solomon in the past. He was the son of
David. Sorry.
David. Yep, no problem. So he's the third king of Israel, second from the lineage of David then.
Yep.
The Davidic kings. And he's probably an old man when he's writing this book.
Sure. Yeah.
He's looking back on his life. He's trying to figure out, what is my legacy? And he sounds kind of bitter in a lot of ways, but he's just being honest.
For sure. He's writing to like students and young men in particular, especially when you look at, I'm trying to think of which chapters, we'll get into it later, but he's clearly addressing his sons and people that he calls himself the teacher, that he's educating. And so it's a pretty cool book to read as a young person, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So the date of the writing, most scholars think it's about 935 BC, which is actually after Solomon's death. So probably he had some writings and it was compiled and put together shortly after he passed away.
Yeah, and then it's all taking place in ancient Israel. So which is like most of the books in the Old Testament, pretty much taking place in Israel.
So Solomon, he's struggling to make sense of the world in a world without God, and he really just can't do it. And kind of the conclusions he draws at the end of the book are that it has to all be about God.
Yeah.
If what we're living for is just the here and now, then that is a very shallow life.
Yep, and I think that that sentiment is expressed a lot when you discuss atheism and agnosticism versus theism. William Lane Craig says it all the time, that if there is no God, life is meaningless, purposeless, valueless, pointless. There's no ultimate meaning, and so therefore he would talk about Friedrich Nietzsche a lot how philosophers like that recognize that if their atheism is true, then depression is the only natural next step.
Yep.
Which is just, it's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, and I think, too, where Paul says that if Christ didn't raise, we are to be pitied above all men.
Oh, yeah.
That is the linchpin that our entire faith, everything that we do rests on. And if that one event didn't happen, Christ's resurrection, then life really does have no purpose, no meaning. I mean, it's that black and white.
Yeah, it is. It's insane. So some of the themes that we're going to see through the book, the first one is I think it's one of the biggest ones, and that's his searching for meaning. I mean, especially chapter 3, that's where he gets really into that, almost like an exaggeration about how everything is pointless and meaningless. So we'll see that a lot through the book is Solomon's search for meaning.
Cool. Also then, emptiness. He lists many of the different searches that he did, and just, he talks about the pleasures of life, power, status, relationships, and why none of it really filled him up. Maybe it gave him temporary relief and temporary satisfaction, but it didn't fulfill him long term.
Yeah, sure. And as you mentioned earlier, this is he's writing this towards the end of his life, and so he's contemplating death and what the end of life looks like. And so that's another huge theme in Ecclesiastes. And it's cool because he's taking the wisdom he's learned from his contemplating death, and he's giving that to younger men who we need to hear that sometimes, that there's a legacy involved, that kind of stuff.
Well, and like you said, thinking about atheists, if you really believe that once you die, that's it, everything stops, then what are you waiting for? Why not just end it right now?
Right.
If everything from here to the end of your life is meaningless anyway, then what's the point?
What's the point?
Our lives don't make sense outside of an eternal perspective.
Yep.
It's
very true. Very true.
So work is another big theme, accomplishing meaningful tasks. And they can fill us up for a while. We can have pride, a sense of accomplishment. But Solomon really wrestled with the fact that a lot of the things that he accomplished weren't going to last.
Yeah.
He even says, future generations aren't going to remember anything that we've said or done, which is kind of ironic that we're reading something that he wrote,
Sure. Again, with
3,000 years
exaggeration,
ago with his exaggeration of it. But truly, again, if you're thinking of just the here and now and just the earthly, what is what we accomplish today going to matter 5,000 years from now, 50,000 years ago, 500,000 years from now? If there's not an eternal perspective, then the work that we do really doesn't last.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that comes with Solomon's wisdom. We talked about that in the book of Proverbs, how he's the wisest man to ever live, yet when you look at his life, he made a lot of really poor decisions.
Yep.
So he talks about human wisdom and how it doesn't have all the answers, and then also how if you can have human wisdom, but if you remove that from God and your relationship with God, then the consequences, it's intense. And we get to see his reflection on his decisions that he's made through Ecclesiastes, which is why, again, I think that though it is a very depressing book, it's very important for people to realize or to read and then realize their impact.
I think it can be an affirming book as well.
Sure.
I mean, I've talked to several people who are not Christians who are going through a difficult period in their life because they're trying to make sense of things.
Yep.
I've told them, read the book of Ecclesiastes. You are going to identify with it, and hopefully they stick around long enough to find out the solution given
Right.
at the end, and that is you've got to turn your life over to God. That's the only way this thing makes sense.
For sure.
Cool. Well, Andy, you want to take us through kind of an outline of the book real quick?
Yeah, sure. So we're going to look at Solomon's personal experiences, his observations about life, some counsel he has, very practical counsel for us as people, and then he's going to end the book through the last couple chapters talking about his conclusions. And so, again, as you just mentioned, you can't just read chapters 1 through 8 and hope to get the whole message. You have to finish the book through the last 4 chapters because that's where he kind of ties it all together and says, now, by the way, I'm not saying life is pointless and meaningless. I'm saying it is if there is no God.
Very good. So every week, guys, we want to give you the opportunity to dive into God's Word with us. If you are listening on your phone, maybe switch over to a Bible app now and read along as we go. Or if you have a paper Bible, I think those still exist, right?
They do.
If you have a paper Bible, you can pull that out right now and follow along. We're going to be in the NLT version today, so feel free to read along as we go. And then also, we are going to present some questions, and our hope is that if you are listening by yourself, that you would take a moment, stop the podcast and journal about those questions and reflect on it. And if you're listening with a group of friends, maybe you're in a life group or something like that, take a second, stop the podcast, and discuss those questions as they appear.
For sure. All right, guys, so we're going to be in the first chapter of Ecclesiastes, the first 11 verses, Ecclesiastes 1 through 11. And they say this: These are the words of the teacher, King David's son, who ruled in Jerusalem. Everything is meaningless, says the teacher, completely meaningless. What do people get for all their hard work under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth never changes. The sun rises and the sun sets, then hurries around to rise again. The wind blows south and then turns north. Around and around it goes, blowing in circles. Rivers run into the sea, but the sea is never full. Then the water returns again to the rivers and flows out again to the sea. Everything is wearisome beyond description. No matter how much we see, we are never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we are not content. History merely repeats itself. It has all been done before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. Sometimes people say, here's something new, but actually it is old. Nothing is ever truly new. We don't remember what happened in the past, and in future generations, no one will remember what we are doing now.
Oh, that's some light reading. You can go ahead and slip my wrist now.
Yep.
Oof, that is heavy.
That's very tough. Yep. And reading that, it's hard to not think of a time when, like you kind of felt similar in that respect. So the question we have for you guys is, have you ever struggled with depression or hit a very low point in your life? What was at the heart of that struggle, and what were you able to do about it?
I remember a very low point in my life. I had decided to go into nursing school.
Yeah.
Much because my parents wanted me to go into a solid career, not ministry.
Yeah.
And I failed out. I did not do very well. I didn't really fail per se, but I would have had to have repeated a class if I'd stayed in it, but I just hated it. And I remember I left Owens, which is where I was, which, nobody grows up and says they want to go to Owens, but I did. Went there. I transferred to University of Toledo, and it was so lonely. Like, all my friends had went to very prestigious, awesome colleges. I went to Owens, which kind of stunk, but at least I knew some people there. Then I went to UT.
By the way, if you go to Owens, it's totally fine. It's totally fine.
Nobody goes to Owens anymore. Okay. What? I'm an Owens alum. I can say that.
I guess, yeah, you went to Owens. That's fine. You went to Owens to be a nurse, right?
Okay. So, thanks, Andy, for making me feel better. On our podcast about depression, I'm getting attacked. So, went to UT, and that first semester there was super rough. I knew nobody. I questioned, what am I doing with my life? Am I ever going to do anything meaningful? And it was rough. And here's the thing, though. At that time, I was a believer. I had a strong relationship with God, but I still had to pull myself out of bed in the morning and make myself go to class. And I still felt kind of alone, even though I knew Christ was there. And it was just really tough. I think it was just a season in my life I had to weather. I started to get more connected. I started to get more involved.
Yeah.
And it slowly helped. But it was a difficult point, despite all the truths I knew about Jesus.
Well, I think that's really important because a lot of people have this misconception about the relationship you will have with Jesus. Like, once you become a Christian, you're not supposed to struggle with depression. You're not going to have these things
just
happen
have more
to you.
faith. What's wrong with you?
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
Put a smile on your face.
Exactly. But I think when you are given the permission to struggle as a believer through those things and not have to hide them or say, well, I'm a Christian, so these things shouldn't be happening, then you can actually attack those things head on, or at least have a community of people that can struggle with you through those things.
Depression is crazy. I mean, almost 15 million people in America struggle with depression. That's a huge percentage of the population.
Yeah.
And I don't think for many people, most people, you can just try harder to be happy and work your way out of it.
No.
I know Tim Butler, who's a therapist that comes to Cedar Creek at times and has spoke for us. He says that for Christians, so these are Christ followers who struggle with depression, he says what they probably need is prayer, counseling, medication, and sometimes all three.
Yeah.
That it's not a matter of faith, but you may need to do something about it if you're truly depressed.
Right, and I think the mentality, try harder, is just not Christian.
No,
it's
right,
not a
yeah,
part
where's
of what
that
we
in
believe.
Scripture?
Yeah, you're not going to find that.
Do better. Work
Right.
yourself out of it.
Yes.
Not so much.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to continue on. Solomon is at the end of his life. Looking back, we've already kind of discussed that. He's trying to help future generations, and he's actually helping future generations like me and whatever through their pain and suffering. So maybe, he says, they put too much trust and hope in something that is temporary. And we've heard this before. So, Luke, you want to read the next passage for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 1. He says, I said to myself, come on, let's try pleasure. Let's look for the good things in life. But I found that this too was meaningless. So he goes on, you can read that there, and he talks about all of these different areas that would appear to be pleasureful. He talks about laughter, wine. He talks about women. And when he says women, he's talking about concubines. So, Andy, do you want to explain what a concubine is? Just kidding.
This is a family podcast.
Yeah, you can Google that one if you want to. He talks about work. He talks about building a nice house, building gardens, increasing in status. None of it builds him up. So we'll pick it up then at verse 9. So I became greater than all those who had lived in Jerusalem before me, and my wisdom never failed me. Anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure. I even found great pleasure in hard work, a reward for all of my labors. But as I looked at everything I had worked so hard to accomplish, it was all so meaningless. Like chasing the wind, there was nothing really worthwhile anywhere. Man.
Yep.
All right, so here's my question. Before you started passionately pursuing Christ, what did you believe would make you fulfilled or happy?
Well, for me, it was definitely my accomplishments or what I could do well in. And so growing up, I always just wanted to make my parents happy. And so I thought that my happiness was going to be determined by the way that they felt about me. And the number one thing that I was pushed in was school all the time. So I thought that by doing well in school, elementary, junior high, high school, into college, that would be the thing that would fill me up. That would be the thing that would provide for me the joy that everybody's looking for. I remember when I was in 5th grade, I got an F on like one test. I think that's the only F I've ever received in my entire life. I got an F on one.
What subject was it?
It was math. And I was usually pretty good at math, and I didn't tell my parents because I was so scared. And then I got another F because I just didn't study, and I was so scared. I hid in a hole, and that, honestly, like I look at that moment, we had to have like my teacher called my parents in, and they were like, "If you'd have just told us you were struggling," I was like, I thought you were gonna kill me. I thought I was dead. But even into my college years before I met Christ, I thought that by progressing in the academic world, I would be filled up with something that only God can fill. And so that was my struggle. And now I can pursue education knowing that I'm doing that for the glory of God, and I want to honor him with the mind that he gave me rather than honor myself with the mind that I think that I've developed.
Do you want to hear my brilliant strategy to be happy?
Yeah, go ahead.
Get a girlfriend.
That's it?
That was it. If I could just get a girlfriend, man, that'll make all my problems go away.
I think a lot of people have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Interesting.
Brilliant
Anyways.
6th grader I was. So death is still coming, and Solomon feels how futile this search is, and he amassed a huge fortune. I mean, he was the richest man that ever lived to that point.
Yeah.
I mean, the modern day equivalency of the wealth that he had was well into the billions. So he amasses
Easily.
this huge fortune, and he realizes that once he dies, he can't even really determine what's going to happen to it. He has very little control over it. So he starts writing about, for everything in life, there is a season. That's where we're going to pick it up. This is Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 4. Andy, do you want to read it?
Sure. For everything, there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance.
Cool. So Solomon writes that there is this rhythm to life, that for everything that happens, there is a season for that. Some of the things described in here are good. Other things are not so good.
Yeah.
So here's our question for discussion. And I will admit, I ripped this 100% off of Ben Snyder because he asked it, and I thought it was pretty good. So here you go. If your life was a season right now, so that means either spring, summer, fall, or winter, what season would it be and why?
You want me to answer that first?
Yeah. Yeah, what do you got?
Fall.
All right. Why fall?
Because it's my favorite. It's the best season. There's no better season than fall. The mild weather, the nice looking trees and stuff. Pumpkin spice lattes are out. I know. Yeah, seriously.
I just lost a little respect for that.
But okay, so if we take the analogy, fall, because right now, especially with we just got done with Fusion Camp and Moab, which were fantastic events. We're kind of settling down a little bit, and then we're gonna have to amp it right back up when school hits. Fall is that time where things are they're changing, and then they're getting ready for winter, which in the Midwest is an intense season. So that's kind of where I feel like I'm at. What about you?
I'd say summer. I mean, I know it is summer right now, but I'm like 3 days away from vacation, and I've already mentally checked out. No, just kidding. This is a great. Our producer's shaking his head. Sorry, Eric. I'll try to do better on the next one. No, I won't. This is a great season of life. Like my kids are at an awesome age. I have a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. Just watching them play and have fun, I'm just really enjoying the season right now. So
Sure.
I know that just like when you're a kid and summer vacation seems to be too short. I know that these are short years, but I'm really enjoying them while I can.
Cool.
All right, let's go to Ecclesiastes 4. So this is chapter 4, 9 through 12. 2 people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, 2 people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer. 3 are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. I think I've read this about 20 times during weddings.
Seriously.
Yeah, but it does make a good point about companionship. In the midst of the despair that Solomon writes about, there is this odd few verses here where he really talks up the importance of other people in your life.
Yeah.
So here's a question I have for you, Andy. Who in your life makes you a stronger person, and why?
It'd be difficult just to name one person because there are plenty of people that have had a crazy influence on my life. But
that's exactly what I'm asking you to do.
Yes, but I mean, I will name one person, and this would hopefully get me brownie points.
Oh, boy. Here it comes.
It's my wife, for sure.
Is she listening to the podcast again after you talked about how long it takes her to get ready in the morning?
I don't think she listened to that one.
Oh,
so
well,
I think I'm still
hopefully
good.
she'll miss this one, too.
I did confess those things to her, though, because they are public knowledge now. But so no, Kayla, for sure. She's one person in my life that has encouraged me to do the things that I really love to do. When I wanted to go back to school, and there's always that weird tension, like I have a full-time job or a family. Should I go back to school, or should I make it the next step? And she is she's a person that encourages and definitely pushes me, for sure. And so I would say Kayla.
Awesome.
What about you?
Is it weird if I don't say my wife? Probably.
Now it is.
All right. I'm going to go in a different direction just to spite you. I'm going to say my daughter. My daughter makes me stronger. And you know why? Because I can now have a tea party and totally own it.
There you go.
Yeah.
And you made fun of me for pumpkin spice lattes?
Well, yeah, I did. Okay. I'm in a strong enough place where I can make fun of you and still hold my own self-worth and value.
I can appreciate that, for sure.
You hate me. Okay. So we are, where are we at here? Acquiring wealth is meaningless. If a wealthy person doesn't have anyone to share it with, then what's the point? And I think that's really what he's getting to, is that if you don't have true companionship, then you are really missing out.
Yeah.
He finds that truth in the midst of his quest to find the meaning of life, that we were not created to be lone wolves, to do things alone.
Right.
And there's real danger in living alone. In fact, I was looking at some of the statistics. You are more likely to die from accident or natural causes if you live alone than if you're married.
Sure.
And
At a younger
sense.
age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It makes sense. I mean, I don't think it's a surprising statistic. It's just one that people don't think about typically.
Right.
Yeah, I think that not just, so for those of you guys that are single, it's not just being married that is the factor here. I think you have to ask yourself, do you have people around you that you're constantly being in community with and growing with? I know that my friends, my closest friends, are the people that have had significant impact in my life. And so it's not just marriage, although marriage is fantastic for that, but it's also your friendships as well.
Very cool. And I think the church plays a role in that as well for all of us, that being involved in a local church makes you stronger as a believer.
Sure.
Because people can encourage you. They can call you out at times when you need that. They can help you in various areas of your life. That's one thing interesting about this upcoming generation is more and more people want to be off on an island by themselves.
Yeah.
They don't want to be accountable to anybody else. They just want to do their own thing. You know, hey, just me and God, we're hanging out, doing our own thing.
Yeah.
That's not in the Bible anywhere.
Right.
We
And
were
it's not good for
created
you.
to be,
Yeah.
no, it's not. We were created to be in community with other people.
Sure. So we've talked a little bit about the different passages in Ecclesiastes that have been kind of depressing, and we talked about how you can't take those out of context. So we're going to wrap it up here with some of his concluding thoughts in Ecclesiastes 12, 1 through 2, where he writes this: "Don't let the excitement of youth cause you to forget your Creator. Honor him in your youth before you grow old and say, 'Life is not pleasant anymore.' Remember him before the light of the sun, moon, and stars is dim to your old eyes, and rain clouds continually darken your sky."
Good stuff. Yeah, I love this passage. Don't wait until you are old to give God the honor, the praise,
Yeah.
the worship, the respect that he deserves.
Yep.
Do it now, wherever you're at. Learn from the mistakes Solomon made, learn from his quest, and put God at the center of your life now, and you will benefit from it the rest of your entire life.
Yeah, and you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that you won't experience depression or sadness or loneliness, but that you know that there's that comfort there through those seasons, and you can look at stories like Solomon. I mean, when you go through suffering as a Christian, you count that as joy because look at Jesus suffered. And Paul said that we don't just count it as something that's awesome to believe in Jesus, but to suffer for his sake is huge.
It's a privilege.
Yeah, so guys, here's some of the things that we want for you, practical next steps. Don't wait until you're old to put God at the center of your life.
Yep.
Don't hope that one day you'll figure it out. You can learn from the wisdom of Solomon now and turn to God now and make him the center of everything that you do.
So there were so many cool things in Ecclesiastes we just simply could not cover. I would encourage you guys, go back, read this book. It's only 12 chapters long. You will benefit from it greatly by spending some real time struggling with these large questions, just like Solomon did.
Sure. You can find us on Facebook, guys, for sure. Connect with both Luke and I. You can find him, Luke Shortridge, or me, Andy Rechtenwald, on Facebook. We'll accept your friend requests. We'd love to hear feedback or any other questions that you might have for us. And you can also email us at podcast@cedarcreek.tv.
Like the podcast, ready to take our podcasting relationship to the next level?
Love that line.
Well, you can do that by writing a review in the iTunes store, or you can share the link on Facebook. That helps other people find the show. We really appreciate it when you guys do that.
Sure. Well, guys, thanks for listening.
Next up, we're going Song of Solomon. We're going to talk about love.
Catch you then.
See ya.